The first winter winds of December crept through the small suburban town like quiet whispers, carrying with them a kind of chill that made even the warmest homes feel slightly colder. Before sunrise, the streets were almost empty, except for a few delivery trucks and the occasional early commuter rushing toward the main road. At the end of a long block, beside an old bus stop that hadn't been renovated in 10 years, a boy named Jamie stood shivering with his backpack pulled tightly across his chest. The weather was harsher today, colder than the forecast had predicted. His breath floated in thin white puffs as he checked the time again, knowing his school bus was still a few minutes away. Jamie was used to cold mornings. His family didn't have much, and warm clothes were luxuries that came sparingly. The jacket he wore wasn't new, but it was thick, warm, and something he cherished. His mother had found it at a second-hand shop and spent an evening patching up a torn sleeve so it would last all winter. To Jamie, it wasn't just clothing. It was a symbol of his mother's effort, her late-night work, and her quiet hope that he would stay warm even when money was tight. As he waited, he noticed a figure on the far side of the bus stop bench. A tall man, hunched over with his thin arms wrapped tightly across his chest. His clothes were worn out, the kind that looked layered but didn't offer real protection. He appeared exhausted, as though life had weighed heavily on his shoulders for far too long. The man's hands trembled in the cold, and he tried to rub warmth into them. His breath was uneven, almost labored. Jamie felt a small tug inside his chest, the kind of tug that often stirred when he noticed someone struggling. His mother always taught him that kindness wasn't something that required wealth. It required a heart that could still feel empathy even in difficult times. He remembered her telling him that the world became better whenever someone decided to care, even if it was uncomfortable. The man's shivering grew more visible, his shoulders tightening with each gust of wind. Jamie could see that the thin coat the man wore wasn't enough for the cold morning. Something about the stranger's loneliness in that moment made Jamie's heart ache. The boy wasn't old enough to fully understand hardship in an adult's life, but he recognized struggle. He recognized need that he looked down at his jacket. It was the warmest thing he owned. A small hesitation passed through him, a natural instinct to protect himself against the cold. But it lasted only a second. Jamie removed his backpack, unzipped his jacket, and slipped it off his shoulders. The cold air hit him sharply, but he ignored the sting. He walked over and gently draped the jacket over the stranger's shoulders. The man froze in surprise, his shivering pausing for a moment as though disbelief temporarily quieted his body. Without saying a word, without needing to, Jamie simply nodded once and stepped back. The stranger pulled the jacket tighter. A look of quiet gratitude crossed his face. Jamie didn't know what had brought the man here, nor why he was alone in the cold morning, but he knew that his small act, simple, human kindness, mattered. Sometimes, a single warm gesture could break through the cold far better than any jacket. Moments later, the school bus arrived and Jamie climbed aboard, feeling the cold clamp sharply against his arms. He tried rubbing them, but it didn't help much. The other kids gave him puzzled looks, wondering why he wasn't wearing a coat. But Jamie simply looked out the window, watching the man at the bus stop as the bus pulled away. The stranger sat hunched on the bench, clutching the jacket like it was a gift far more valuable than any of them could guess. The day unfolded slowly for Jamie. At school, the cold continued to linger on his skin, yet strangely, his heart felt warmer than it had in a long time. He didn't care if he had to endure a chilly morning. He didn't care if his classmates whispered. He felt a quiet pride that filled him from within, a kind of warmth no winter wind could take away. But as lunch rolled around, something unusual happened. The school intercom buzzed overhead, and an announcement called for all students and teachers to gather in the auditorium. Whispers rippled through the hallways as everyone tried to guess the reason. Assemblies weren't common on short notice. Jamie filed into the large room with the rest of the students. The stage was set up with a podium, but the principal wasn't the one speaking. Instead, a group of administrators stood on stage with someone none of the students recognized. The man wore a long, elegant coat, the kind that contrasted sharply with the modest budget of the school. There was an air of importance around him, though his expression was strangely gentle, almost familiar. S. Jamie took his seat among his classmates. His eyes widened. The man standing at the center wasn't a complete stranger after all. He recognized him instantly. The same man who had been freezing at the bus stop earlier that morning. But now he looked different. His posture was firm, his hands warm, his clothing clean and well-fitted. The transformation was so striking Jamie wondered if he had imagined the morning entirely. The principal began speaking, her tone unusually enthusiastic. She explained that the school had just received news of a significant scholarship program funded by a private donor, someone who believed in giving opportunities to children from working families, children who needed support to chase their potential. The donor had personally requested to visit the school that very afternoon. The man stepped forward as the principal introduced him as the new sponsor. Murmurs echoed across the auditorium as he spoke about compassion, gratitude, second chances, and the importance of kindness. Though he never mentioned Jamie by name, his eyes scanned the room and paused briefly at the boy who now sat breathless in disbelief. The man's gaze carried warmth, the kind of warmth that felt like a silent promise. The assembly ended with applause, but Jamie remained stunned. He didn't know how the man had transformed so quickly, nor what story lay behind his circumstances. But one thing became clear. The small act of kindness he offered that morning had somehow blossomed into something far larger than he could ever imagine. As students filtered out of the auditorium, Jamie stepped into the hallway with a lingering sense of wonder. Something told him that the events of the day were not finished, that this moment was only the beginning of a change that would ripple through the rest of his life. And as he walked toward his locker, arms still cold but heart burning with warmth, he sensed a shift in the air, a quiet turning point, a moment waiting to unfold into something extraordinary.